It is dark here inside this semiotic Trojan horse. While we wait for the semiotic sign action to be activated, once the target audience perceives some visual element as meaning bearing, everything is semiotically dormant. In the next 4 episodes in this 5th omnibus, we will understand our target audience as useful knowledge agents to help us visually communicate to them. Like a Trojan horse, semiotic signs sit in plain sight until they are triggered. Let us now spring into sign action. Welcome to the 5th omnibus edition from Semiosis 101 Season 4. In this omnibus, I collect the next 4 episodes of Semiosis 101 Season 4 into a single edition. These 4 episodes can be watched back to back in this edition on the subject of the Semiotic Trojan Horse. If you have watched any Semiosis 101 episodes before, then you already know I am Dave Wood, and I explained Charles Sanders Peirce's semiotic theory of semiosis sign action in designer-centric terms. Season 4's overall semiotic theme is on developing a new semiotic mindset to help enhance how you visually communicate. Semiosis 101 will build your confidence to apply semiotic sign action into your own designs or illustrations to enhance how you visually communicate. Why do you need Semiosis 101? Peirce's semiotic writing and terminology is unfortunately very obtuse. After all, we study design and illustration and not philosophy, so we need theory centered to creators' needs. Yes, that is why you need Semiosis 101. So subscribe and let us jump straight into the Semiotic Trojan Horse. As creators, we describe what we create as coming from tacit knowledge. We instinctively know how we will answer the creative problem our clients set us. Our skilled practice is knowledge we cannot tell. In this 14th episode of Semiosis 101 Season 4, we move from tacit knowledge to informed semiotic practice, and from first order thinking to second order thinking. A semantic turn, if you prefer, but another step in developing your semiotic mindset. So far in recent episodes, we have explored aligning your ideation phase with your audience's lived experiences. Applying semiosis in your ideation phases provides you with the visual communicational structural know-how to ensure your visual language is meaning-bearing. To help you to semiotically hook and retain your audience's attention, let us treat your target audience as knowledge agents. The audience's lived experiences provide you creators with clues to what qualities they already are familiar with. These familiar qualities can be hacked in ideation to visually communicate the intended concept to your audience. By framing your audience from passive consumers to knowledge agents, you will be centering them within your ideation. This small change in your mindset will position yourself within a human-centered creative process. From this human-centered position, your application of pragmatic semiotic sign action from first order thinking to ideating more empathically. Peirce's pragmatic approach provides you with a logical way to understand your audience's contextual understanding by using a working hypothesis. This is how he describes abductive reasoning, which has also been referred to as the logic of design. I argue that Peirce's abductive reasoning hypothesis aligns with second order thinking. I've already spent time in seasons 2 and 3 covering hypothesis, so check out those playlists. Second order thinking is something that Klaus Krippendorff discusses at length within human-centered design. Krippendorff is not complimentary about the power of semiotics, but I think he mistakes Peircean semiotics for how Caesarian semiology approaches meaning. Your act of forming a working hypothesis of how your target audience already experiences things in the world forces you to build your understanding of what they understand. This is why I reframe the audience as knowledge agents. Audiences' lived experiences of what they are already familiar with will be revealed in terms that the audience already use. Their contextual frameworks are constructed from how they socio-culturally understand what they experience. This experiential context is sensed and learned and offers you culturally established visual touchpoints. Now, at this moment, you may be thinking many opposing points of view based on how you have been taught at design school. I understand that. I encounter it every time I talk with colleagues and professionals. So, before we proceed, to help you recalibrate your creative mindset, I want to remind you of two important points. Firstly, I am framing your design or illustration ideation phase through a pragmatic, philosophical lens of Charles Sanders Peirce's theory of semiotic sign action, semiosis. Secondly, I am drawing your attention to the action part of his semiotic sign action. This action is not the action of the creative. Rather, it is the action of the visual language used as an effect on the mind of your target audience. Creatives and their audience are engaged in a communicational situation. Now that I have re-emphasized these 2 points, let us consider this communicational situation and how semiosis is beneficial to enhancing how you visually communicate. Whatever you creatives create has latent meaning-bearing qualities, even if you do not intend or realize it. Why? Humans are hardwired to interpret meaning from what they see. Remember, Peirce states that nothing is a semiotic sign until it is perceived as something more than the obvious denotation, until what is seen is interpreted as a sign for something else. This interpretation is contextual and social culturally informed by what the audience has understood from within the context of their lived experience, their life worlds. It is within the social cultural context that your audience researchers can discover insights that will visually resonate with your audience. These insights are your Semiotic Trojan Horse. Any contextual insights that your audience research provides you, no matter how immediately superficial, helps you form a working hypothesis. You do not immediately need huge amounts of professional obtained marketing data. In fact, you may not have the budget or time to even contemplate that level of audience research. That is why the logic of abductive reasoning is referred to as the logic of design. Peirce refers to abductive reasoning as hypothesis, and hypothesis, truth, is not fixed. It evolves with each additional piece of fresh context you reveal about your audience. Hypothesis is a qualitative tool to empathically understand and confirm how your audience's contextual experience will inform their interpretation of what they see. Hypothesis helps you to begin ideating from scraps of knowledge. Applying semiosis helps you align your visual language. By employing second-order thinking, by treating your target audience as knowledge agents, and by recalibrating your creative mindset to understand that what you create will also have a subconscious effect on the minds of your audience, your ideation can be informed by key qualitative contextual insights that will enhance the effectiveness of your visual communications. Or if you want to read more about this, then check out the Semiosis 101 Semiotic resource on Ghost. Link is below in the description. To begin to conclude, as you begin your ideation to answer a problem your client has briefed you on, you sketch out ways you think will creatively provide an engaging aesthetic solution. This has the inherent first-order thinking trap of only focusing on what you, as creatives, aesthetically like. This reduces your visual communication effectiveness. Let me recalibrate your creative mindset to summarize what we have been discussing so far. We are focusing on improving your ideation so that you are not second-guessing your audience. Over the last 2 episodes, we have briefly unpacked first-order thinking. I am facilitating a cognizant move on your part from this limited approach during ideation to a more empathic and qualitative communication situation. This pivots on a change to second-order thinking and human-centered approach to ideating creative solutions. With me so far? Good. If not, watch the last few episodes to familiarize yourself. From this cognizant ideation position, you can open yourself to audience-focused ideation, second-order thinking, and away from creative-centric ideation decisions, first-order thinking. As soon as you can reframe your creative mindset to connecting with your audience, semiosis will facilitate this. How? Remember I said a few minutes ago that semiosis' sign action is the action of the semiotic effect on what happens in the mind of the audience. The creator's visual language represents the concept the client wants the audience to understand and act on. The audience interprets these representations through appropriate use of meaning-bearing visual elements. These are semiotic signs. The aim of the client and the creative is to mediate the audience to connotatively interpret this concept. Then they want that audience to take the action the client needs them to, e.g. buy this, go here, read this, etc. Last episode we came to the understanding that just because as the creatives you design or illustrate from your aesthetic likes, your audience is not guaranteed to understand what you think may be obvious. Through the pragmatic semiotic sign action determination flow, you creators can enhance how you visually communicate. This looping flow of sign action between the client's concept, the creator's representations, and the audience's interpretation affords you to encode levels of meaning-bearing semiotic signs into your designs and illustrations. These levels of meaning are released as the audience perceives and interprets what they see. Your use of an audience hypothesis helps you to avoid second guessing and mindfully align your visual language choices with context your audience have experience of. In the next episode, we will begin wrapping up Season 4's theme of developing a fresh semiotic mindset. So, subscribe to be notified when the next free episode is published, or become a Semiosis 101 producer on Patreon and watch all future episodes months ahead of YouTube. I love the Trojan Horse metaphor, so I will be unashamedly using it a lot over the next few episodes. In this 15th episode of Semiosis 101 Season 4, I will stay with hollow wooden metaphors. Previously, I have used a wooden Russian babushka doll as a metaphor for the nesting of weaker semiotic signs within stronger signs. A babushka doll is good to understand the nesting of lesser things inside greater things. However, the Trojan horse metaphor is ideal in explaining how something that is originally perceived as dormant can suddenly be activated into action. Just like Odysseus' trick to gain access to Troy, semiotic signs can also hide in plain sight, ready to pounce. Semiosis remains dormant until activated by our audience. What suddenly turns a visual element into something meaningful. Some of you may see this as a metaphor for duplicity and sneakiness. In Homer's stories, the existent Trojan horse was Odysseus' trick to capture Troy. But I'm not storming a city here. When I invoke the Trojan horse metaphor, I use this in the context of one thing primed to reveal itself as really another thing. Semiotic signs are always initially perceptually dormant, but in plain sight. Encoded signs can only be activated by the audience's perception. Like the Trojan horse, any encoded semiotic sign action is initially dormant. The encoded semiotic signs in your visual language will always be in plain sight to the audience. The audience will be unaware that it is meaning-bearing until they trigger the sign action. Then, like the ancient Greeks in Troy, semiotic signs spring into meaning-bearing action. This moment of audience perception does not change the design or illustration. The Trojan horse still remained a wooden horse after Troy's sack. Once perception is sprung in the audience's mind, they interpret what they see as instantly, possibly familiar to something they already understand. The visual element that has been perceived in your visual language now begins to mediate suggested existent things. In your final aesthetic work, your audience interprets meaning from the visual language you decide to use. These visual meaning-bearing elements are semiotic signs. You have facilitated a semiotic dialogue which subconsciously triggers your audience to initiate their perception of the encoded intended meaning. You creators create the representations of the concept you wish to visually communicate in the visual language you select. The coordination from meaning-bearing to interpretation is co-created. The way you embed meaning by representing the concept in your visual language is up to you. What your audience interprets depends on their lived experiences. Semiosis' power to encode meaning and then semiotically release this meaning within your visual language follows a triadic determination flow. In design-centric terms, Peirce's determination flow follows 3 steps: concept, representation, interpretation. The latter, if coordinated well, should result in your audience interpreting the concept. However, this is not a single pass around the flow to immediately gain all the meaning at once. Any interpreted meaning grows through many determination flow passes. Each interpretive pass is subconsciously made by the audience from what you creators have illustrated or designed. Once a visual element is perceived as meaning-bearing, all audience interpretation happens in the mind of the audience. For your target audience to interpret the meaning you need them to, needs semiotically coordinating. In a designer-centric context, think of this as the tone of voice you are conveying in your illustration or design. Your audience's lived experiences, like worlds, provides them with the cultural processes to interpret meaning from within an accrued set of reference points to things they already know. Klaus Krippendorf, in his human-centered design book, The Semantic Turn, states, "Nobody can control cultural processes." He is correct. You creators cannot control what your target audience will or will not use as reference points from which they form interpretations. However, Semiosis has your back. While you cannot control what your audience will understand, you can discover what cultural reference points will be mutually understood. A working hypothesis will help you here. This is where the coordination of meaning is shared between you creators and your target audiences, even if you never actually speak with them. Your visual language is the bridge between the concept your client wants you to visually communicate and semiotically mediating the latitude for your audience to interpret that concept. This latitude of the interpretation of the representation is subtly mediated to facilitate the audience to subconsciously make interpretive passes of your representations. These single hits of meaning are called synscience. Obviously, we are talking about connotated meaning here, a subtle layering of messages to be constructed by the audience. This is dependent on their commitment to build this understanding from their interpretations of what they see visually represented. How much of this messaging is conveyed is controlled by semiotic signs. The semiotic sign action only begins when the audience perceives a visual element as meaning-bearing. This is controlled by the weakest level of semiotic signs, qualities which trigger possibly familiar hints at deeper meaning. If subconsciously triggered, this instantly begins the audience to begin interpreting. What keeps the audience actively engaged in building meaning is then semiotically controlled by visually mediating the audience to suggested existent things they already have experience and knowledge of. Or if you want to read more about this, then check out the Semiosis 101 semiotic resource on Ghost. Link is below in the description. The coordination from meaning bearing to interpretation cannot be done by you single-handedly. You need to understand your audience to then coordinate your visual language decisions on how to visually represent the client's concept. You need audience involvement. We already have many Semiosis 101 episodes unpacking the logic of design, Peirce's abductive reasoning, so check out that playlist. See link in the description. This is a form of logic that, paraphrasing heavily, is based on a present truth which can evolve once more is discovered. Peirce also calls abductive reasoning a hypothesis. Any creative can create a working hypothesis about your target audience with minimal of information. Ideation can quickly begin and sketched ideas can develop, and visual language decisions can be iterated with each new piece of audience information you add to your hypothesis. You can think of this hypothesis as the development of a persona to help you attune your client's concept into visual language your audience will find familiar. These qualitative clues connect your visual language to your audience's lived experiences. It is in this way, with a small, simple change to your semiotic mindset, you can strengthen how you visually communicate complex messages. Complexity is built from simpler elements, and more complex semiotic messaging is constructed through layering and nesting semiotic signs, from mere ephemerally weak qualities up to more complex messaging. I talked earlier about how semiotic sign action instantly begins after a visual element is perceived. This begins with ephemeral visual qualities which only offer possible familiarities to things known to the audience. This instant commencement of audience's interpretation is what Peirce refers to as a quasi-sign. A quasi-sign instantly gives way to mediation. Semiotic mediation takes three classes of semiotic signs to build meaning. If a quasi-sign is possible, familiar, instant, then mediation semiotically builds on this to deliver meaning. Mediated semiotic signs are classed by Peirce as synth signs, single deliveries of meaning. As soon as a simple quality is perceived as meaning-bearing, then the mediation semiotically works on what the audience first finds possibly familiar. As they begin to build their interpretation from mere qualities, their perception of the visual entity moves from possibly existent to then suggested existence. In clearer terms, the audience's interpretation moves semiotically from possible connections to firmer suggested connections to something they can actually name. In the next episode, we will explore this in more depth, so remember to subscribe to Semiosis 101 to be notified when this next episode is published, or become a Semiosis 101 producer on Patreon and watch all future episodes months ahead of YouTube, plus other exclusive Patreon-only video content. Hint, hint. As far back as Season 2, we explored how semiosis, at its simplest semiotic power, can help you to hook your audience's attention. However, semiosis can also help you to retain your audience's attention through your aesthetic. Then, with retained attention, you can then semiotically mediate deeper meaning to be perceived and interpreted. In this 16th episode of Semiosis 101 Season 4, we focus on semiotically retaining audience attention and mediating meaning. So, how can semiosis help you mediate to your audience to improve how they semiotically interpret your intended meaning? As far back as episode 217, I introduced the persona design tool into your semiotic toolbox. I am not directly discussing co-design methods here, but I will certainly be crossing over into wider co-design techniques to help you develop semiotic narratives. In the previous episode, using a Peircean semiotic lens, I explained how your target audience begins to interpret meaning from your visual language. Remember, we are discussing connotative and denotative visual communication here. Before any meaning can be semiotically interpreted, the audience has to first perceive that a visual element within plain sight in the design or illustration is meaning-bearing. Then, within the framework of semiosis, meaning is at a semiotically weak, possible, familiar, instant level. This instant moment of interpretation is referred to by Peirce as a quasi-sign. Once perceived as meaning-bearing, the audience's interpretation is mediated across three semiotic sign classes. This mediation moves their perception of the visual language from possible familiar of something they may recognise to possible existence, where they begin to form connections to actual things they know. The final semiotic mediated stage now suggests existent connections to things the audience already has knowledge of to move their interpretation closer to the client's concept. How can you semiotically represent the client's concept in your visual language so that your aesthetic mediates the intended concept to your target audience? To discover and ideate the most effective visual language requires you to understand what your audience has experience of. Abductive reasoning in the form of a working hypothesis, referred to as the logic of design, helps you to achieve that. An audience persona is an excellent design tool which can help you personify your understanding of your audience's lived experiences. By building audience personas, you can focus their life world into a handy guide to represent the client's design concept in your illustrations or designs. A persona that details what your audience, from their lived experiences, will already understand and connect with your client's concept will benefit your visual communication. We use the term tone of voice a lot, but this is a visual communication problem to solve rather than just linguistically. As semiosis is pragmatic and not linguistic semiotics, It can aid the crafting of your visual language through more active visual hooks to create visual mood, personality, emotional cues, and a visual scene setting from mere qualities to coordinate the audience's interpretation where we need them to be. We creators cannot control the target audience's cultural processes they use to interpret. However, with your understanding of the audience's life worlds, drawn from using a hypothesis of what they know and distilled into a persona, you can facilitate their perception. The audience life world persona goes hand in hand with how you then can semiotically mediate them in your aesthetic to the intended interpretation. In Peirce's phenomenological explanation of the states in which we experience possible qualitative familiarity is in a state of firstness, whereas the audience becomes mediated and draws on their lived experiences to help them interpret what they see. The suggested existential connections are in a state of secondness. Full meaning is only agreed in this highest state, which Peirce names as thirdness. Here, the audience's understanding is at a general level where the visual language's meaning is resolved as a proxy for the concept. This highest level of semiotic meaning is delivered at an agreed level, a general social, culturally resolution that when the audience sees X, it is a proxy for Z. This highest level of semiotic delivery spans 6 classes of semiotic signs. The power of these final 6 out of 10 sign classes nest lower semiotic signs within them. This helps you as an illustrator or designer, once the audience's attention and engagement has been mediated, to begin to extract the intended concept from what they see, to reinforce the visual communication of the concept. Let me explain. The audience's interpretations are strengthened as their perception of what they see represented in the visual language are in a way rechecked, although the audience is now confident they understand the concept being visually communicated. The audience is expectant they agree what is being visually communicated connotatively. However, the semiotic signs help them subconsciously to double check their interpretations. This agreement level is social-culturally learned. Peirce calls this delivery of agreed meaning as a legi sign. Legi as in law. Within these sign classes, the semiotic signs facilitate the audience to move from qualitative possible familiar interpretations to mediated interpretations, from possible existence to suggested existence. Once the audience are able to interpret agreed meaning at these levels, they are ready to agree what they see are now proxies for the concept. To interpret at this highest level, their perception moves from the possible through the suggested until they socially, culturally learn to resolve what they generally perceive is the concept. Or if you want to read more about this, then check out the Semiosis 101 Semiotic resource on Ghost. Link is below in the description. So, all that theory is nice. Well done me, but how do you enable that perception? Let us return to our audience persona, abstracted into a personification of what your target audience already understands. If you want to connotatively visually communicate your client's concept through your aesthetic, then qualitatively understanding what your audience generally associates with that concept will be beneficial. Yes, this persona is drawn from what your working hypothesis reveals through employing abductive reasoning. This second order thinking approach of what your audience qualitatively associates with what you need to visually communicate affords you insights to hook and retain attention, thus aligning their interpretation with your intended concept. The semiotic audience persona does not focus on marketees, demographics. Rather, it focuses on your audience's qualitative associations they already have to your intended concept. This is essentially providing you with a semiotic narrative to see how they will probably interpret. Klaus Krippendorff makes several useful statements about narratives in the creative process. To quickly paraphrase, Krippendorff observes that narratives are human creations, and so is design. Narratives are essentially cooperative constructions, told in the expectation of being understood, and enable narrators and listeners to make sense of their worlds. By constructing a qualitative audience persona as a semiotic narrative, you create a general narrative to help yourself make sense of their worlds. In doing so, you are recalibrating your ideation prep through another small development in your semiotic mindset. As I have said earlier, you may never meet your audience to interview them. Rather, through research and abductive reasoning, the logic of design, you are qualitatively inquiring into what lived experience insights you can semiotically hack. These qualitative insights can enhance your visual language. Your creative ability to visually communicate with even a few qualitative insights from your audience will benefit your visual language choices. Whereas previously you may have selected a certain colour palette from personal preference, a distilled semiotic narrative can reveal subtle social cultural nuances that will enhance audience perceptions. If not colour, then line, shapes, textures, etc. I am focusing on your initial visual communication building blocks that, when composed, build more complex meaning. In the next episode, we will explore this theme further. Remember to subscribe to Semiosis 101 on YouTube to be notified when the next free episode is published, or become a Semiosis 101 producer on Patreon and watch all future episodes months ahead of YouTube, and get other exclusive Patreon-only content and a named producer credit on future episodes. Well, I think that looks like this. No matter what we are designing or illustrating, we expect our final outcome will clearly visually communicate what we intended. Yes? However, with no criticism of your personal creative skills, your target audience may not see what you see. In this 17th episode of Semiosis 101 Season 4, we semiotically consider where your visual language can use semiosis to avoid miscommunication. We are not talking about creative genius nor ego, neither is helpful. However, we will, over the next 9 minutes, be discussing human-centered design in the context of semiotic sign action. Your own developing semiotic mindset will now begin to synthesize many of this season's epiphanies. What? You have no epiphanies yet? Well, you will if you watch the previous Semiosis 101 episodes after this episode. One of the principal design books I have referenced throughout Season 3 is Klaus Krippendorff's The Semantic Turn. In his book, he makes a comment about audience intuition, which I will rehash. Illustrators and designers always straddle between what can be visually communicated and what can only be felt or intuited by the audience. I like this mental image he uses of straddling as visual communication straddles disciplines. I will now recontextualize his comments through a semiosis lens and focus on how intuition affects your creative aesthetic outcomes. Yes, I do mean your designs and illustrations, but let us not get sidetracked about media choices. Your aesthetic outcomes are not passive. They have a visual communication job to achieve. Your aesthetic hooks and retains audience attention so that the semiotic sign action can facilitate interpretation. This audience interpretation of what they see is enabled through your choice of visual language. This visual language may grammatically structure quite complex levels of visually communicated meaning by representing the client's concept, not denotatively but connotatively. This complexity can be stripped down into the fundamental building blocks of visual communication, e.g. shapes, colours, marks, lines, textures, etc. The individual marks are merely marks, but composed through composition, technique, texture, etc. A simple mark can contribute to deeper meaning. Krippendorff's qualitative framing of the audience's interpretation as felt or intuitive is crucial here. What you creatives create is a tangible thing, whether it is a printed or digital design or illustration. How your audience understands what you are visually communicating is subconscious, perceptual, qualitative, and even emotional. Your ideation needs to accommodate a qualitative audience. From a pragmatic perspective, your aesthetic is not passive. The very nature of the visual language you select to build the aesthetic has multiple visual components. Each visual component has the potential, however weak, to be meaning-bearing to the audience. If you use the colour green, say, in your visual language because, using the old cliche, your client likes it, this can be the difference between successful visual communication or a miscommunication failure. Green is green, but even colour can accrue social cultural meaning to it. Let us say your client is eco-friendly. The colour green has one social cultural contextual meaning for ecological or environmental concerns. If your client is a massive polluter, then the use of green will be challenged as greenwashing. Green is just a colour. Green is contextually and semiotically meaning bearing. Used in the wrong audience context, any simple element in your visual language could divert audience intuition to something else you do not intend them to consider. Let me refer to this as the, well, that looks like this enigma that designers and illustrators straddle every day. What you visualize in your aesthetic using your chosen visual language clearly only visually communicates that denotative. How can the audience see that as a proxy for this connotative? In this season, we have unpacked how audience life worlds inform how the audience will interpret new things. When you ideate, you are mindfully seeking ways to visually communicate the concept for audience intuition. The visual elements you use in your visual language are, in plain sight, already suggesting meaning to your audience. But is it what you intend? We have all seen the optical illusions, a picture of a vase, or is it two faces? Or a rabbit? Or is it a duck? Yes? Well, I'm not talking about those intentional illusions when I use the, well, that looks like this enigma. What I am referring to is the difference between visually communicating and miscommunicating. That is a semiotic fine line between the representation of and the interpretation of the intended concept. This is not a criticism of your creative abilities in any way, but rather it's drawing your attention to how you represent the client's concept to your target audience, and how your target audience interprets what you represent. Your designs and illustrations are always clearly visible, aesthetically there in plain sight for everyone to enjoy and appreciate your talent. A brochure, a poster, a piece of packaging, etc. are tangible artifacts the audience can see, touch and interact with. To the audience, a brochure is clearly a brochure, etc. Obviously, these are just formats, and the visual communication lies within the designs and illustrations in any artifact. We are concerned with what some of you may refer to as a visual tone of voice or connotative meaning. Or if you want to read more about this, then check out the Semiosis 101 semiotic resource on Ghost. Link is below in the description. I keep returning to branding for examples to explain this. How does Coca-Cola ensure you do not confuse its brand of cola with Pepsi? Yes, obviously in how the brand's designs are different to each other's. Duh, but think about this. You see the iconic red and white of Coca-Cola, or iconic the red, the white, black and blue of Pepsi. Both brands iconically use red and white, but you as shoppers learn the difference to differentiate buying cola by one brand from the other brand's cola. Notice I use the term iconic not as a synonym for classic, but in its actual semiotic usage for iconic representation. This is the weakest semiotic level of meaning-bearing representation in semiosis, using qualities such as colour, red and white, and shapes, the white swirl of the lettering and ribbon. These colour combinations and swirly ribbons in this branding context help visually communicate Coca-Cola's brand. Red, white and swirls in another context could visually communicate Wall's ice cream or Santander Bank or someone's favourite type of lollipop. In one context, the iconic representation you employ in your visual language will ensure the audience knows it means cola, because the audience socially culturally have learned that the associations mean cola when they see it. But when they see the same visual elements in an unfamiliar context, it can skew the audience's interpretations. By being mindful of this iconic representation contextual connection to your audience, you can semiotically ensure your audience are facilitated to the context you need them to be in. If you want them to enjoy a lovely lollipop, you don't want them thinking what they will taste will be cola and made by a famous brand. Obviously, this is a flippant example. I use it to make you realise that the familiarities evoked in the mind of the audience is iconic representation. Although iconic representation is at the simplest level of semiosis, it is firmly nested within the two higher levels. Iconic representation semiotically mediates the audience from familiar qualities to existing things. At the highest semiotic power of representation, existing things are generally agreed by the audience to be, in this visual context, proxy for the intended concept. Intuitively, your target audience's perception of what they see is partly dependent on their previous experiences, reference points, and expectations. They bring these when interpreting what you represent with your visual language. In the next episode, we begin to consolidate all the semiosis theory into practice. So remember to subscribe to be notified when this episode is published, or become a Semiosis 101 producer on Patreon and watch all future episodes months ahead of YouTube. See you all again for the next Semiosis 101 episode. Semiosis 101 is unique in helping illustrators and designers to semiotically enhance your visual communication skills. One designer-centric semiotic video at a time. Remember to hit subscribe to be notified when the next episode hits.